Hmm. The best Half-Life 1 mod on Steam.
Hey there, Half-Life 1 but different. Half-Life 1 but more PS1? Half-Life 1 but more GoldenEye? I'm not sure how to best describe Delta Particles, which is the name of one of the few Half-Life 1 mods on Steam. From a greatly expanded arsenal to thick Russian accents to woman to the best iteration of Zelda I've witnessed yet, this Half-Life 1 mod kinda has it all. But is it actually fun? Today I'll be summarizing, analyzing and reviewing this mod and let you know all you need to know about it. Subscribe! Thank you. Half-Life Delta Particles starts unlike any Half-Life 1 mod. The tram ride is skipped, which I would say is a nice change actually, if this mod took place in Black Mesa. This might seem like a big twist, but this mod makes it obvious rather quickly. We are at Delta Base, a different research facility set in Nevada. The mod's aesthetics will continue to reflect this being a totally different place, which I actually don't mind at all. A ballsy move, but if done right, it can pay off heavily. This mod skipping the tram ride is a missed opportunity in my opinion. With all these new textures, models and characters, it would have been nice to receive an introduction to Delta Base. This could have also been used to more clearly message that we are not at Black Mesa. Again, if you are perceptive of your surroundings, you will notice this anyways. But if there ever was a mod that needed a tram ride, it's this one. This is only a minor complaint though, as the rest of the intro is pretty fun. You may remember me saying that I would be summarizing this mod. As somewhat of a summarization is always part of an analysis, I usually mean that I will summarize the story of the mod. In this case, there is close to none. The only piece of story this mod features is in its intro, and I think it's a really cool one. We slip into our purple HEV suit, protection suit, that has a noticeably Eastern European voice.
Welcome to protective system for use in hazardous environment conditions. All systems are activated.
And then meet a scientist called Diana. We're doing a teleportation experiment, very reminiscent of Half-Life 1's intro. Diana mentions that Black Mesa is also potentially conducting a very important experiment. I wonder what that may be. She explains that we're going to the border world, referring to Zen. We first operate the machinery in order to send some other scientists into Zen. Right then, we find out that Black Mesa is doing the experiment at the exact same time. The chambers are entangled, and we get teleported into the Black Mesa teleportation chamber and see Gordon, after which we see said entanglement happening more clearly. Back at Delta Base, we see the resonance cascade taking effect. After a prompt knockout, we awake to a changed facility. Zen life has now taken over the Delta Base. As mentioned, this is about as far as the story of this mod extends until after the ending. More on that later. But let me go back for a second. There is one thing holding this mod back, which is some thick accents.
Firstly, Liquid only teleports small materials, and secondly, only one person could be sent to the border road attack.
Now, thankfully, this mod does feature subtitles, which is unusual for a Gold Source mod, but the voice lines remain a problem. I always advocate for diverse voice actors. I mean, look at TF2 and the distinct accents of those characters. An accent does not have to hold you back, just as it isn't holding back my German ass from recording this video. Though making sure all your lines are understandable to the average English speaker is rather important in my opinion, which I believe this mod has failed a lot. And even in the times where one could say it's understandable, you would much rather have your player try and understand the contents of what's being said, rather than trying to understand what's being said in the first place. Again, I don't believe this should hold back anyone from doing voice acting at all. What I'd recommend to anyone doing amateur voice acting who isn't from an English-speaking country is having an English speaker by your side while recording, so they can tell you what to improve. Moving on though, we now enter the main gameplay loop of the first of 4 chapters of this mod, Delta Base. Said gameplay loop being running around, killing stuff, including a new fast zombie enemy, opening stuff, moving through stuff. Pretty regular things. The 4 chapters of this mod are actually very visually distinct, which I enjoy. A few scientists and guard interactions later, we find our first weapon of the new, greatly expanded arsenal, which is the wrench. The wrench works exactly the way it does in Opposing Force, though if you ask me, it feels even stronger. It's now time to mention the unique gibbing added into this mod. You can decapitate enemies, for example, including creatures like hound eyes. Makes bonking people with the wrench 100 times more fun. I also love the fact that one of the guards we meet here uses voice lines with the Opposing Force HECU.
Let's get the hell out of here!
Just something you don't see too often. We eventually crash down an elevator and awaken an infirmary, where a guard gives us a Glock in a slick little animation. The secondary fire has been changed into a powerful burst fire mode. Otherwise, except for a sound change, I don't notice any difference. I do enjoy the new sound though. It somehow sounds more classic than the Half-Life 1 sound, if that makes sense. Like the sounds of a weapon from an early PS2 shooter. Which I know Half-Life 1 was as well, but I think you know what I mean, maybe? As for other weapons,
Not really.
we also get a crowbar here. A yellow one, it's fine. And we receive grenades. They look different but are pretty much the same as the ones from Half-Life 1. This mod then does something pretty fun, which is clearly offering an alternate way that features a reward at the end. You can either go to the right and just pass up on the opportunity, or you go left and find a tentacle punching around on a small, comical pathway. Seriously, what was this built for? If you make it to the end, you receive the shotgun a lot earlier than if you would have ignored this. The shotgun is one of the most fun weapons. While the main fire remains the same with a changed sound, the secondary fire turns it into an auto shotgun, which is an incredibly fun weapon. Ammo will be sparse though, which is something I generally want to mention. This mod isn't easy, some of which is thanks to the fact that you receive ammo very sparsely here. Now obviously this was simply my experience. I may just suck, but I found myself going back to a melee weapon more often than not generally, or found myself enabling God mode to get out of otherwise impossible situations. If you want me to get nitpicky, this chapter drags for a tiny bit, even if the level design was very nice overall and even featured some fun bits like a security camera you can actually look through. Before the chapter ends, we receive one last weapon, an SMG, onto which you can attach a silencer if you like to. A very strong weapon with some great sounds. Again, don't ask me what this gun is supposed to be. I have no idea. We finally reunite with Diana, who basically just recaps what I already told you. She also adds that the researchers in the border world are currently stuck. She then tells us to go look for survivors as they move their equipment to the surface. This is also our first introduction to robot soldiers. Surely these won't turn on us later in the mod and attack us instead of Xenians. No way. As we enter a tram once more, and the Delta-based version of Otis waves us goodbye, we enter the second chapter, Exit to the Surface. This chapter is the longest and also really well done in my opinion. It finally offers a bit of a tram ride through the facility. I want to get to the thing I love most about this chapter out of the way immediately, which is that choice of weather. This may sound silly, but I have a point here. Gold Source did a lot of things right, and it was revolutionary when it released. And given that we're still talking about it now, it remains relevant to this day. But there's obviously the elephant in the room, which is that it doesn't look all that realistic. Now, as founder of Valve, Gabe Newell famously said, "Fuck realism," or something like that. But especially if you wanna get good looking lighting, the direct shadows of this engine are limiting. This is where this overcast weather setting comes into play. This weather IRL casts very diffuse shadows, which is exactly what you wanna do if you plan on playing into the strengths of Gold Source. This weather setting really makes Gold Source pop out in my opinion. And I also happen to be a fan of this type of weather generally. Gotta add that at some point if you live in the clouded ass Deutschland. Overall, this chapter features a ton of creative, fun and good looking environments and some great puzzles. I sometimes found myself stuck on the puzzles, but I was honestly alright with that. Rather a bit too much thinking than too little. Especially today where most people leave their thinking up to dumbass machines. All you guys' brains are rotting by the way, literally. Uninstall that shit. We meet Diana again. This time she wants us to get a freight train to transport the equipment to an evacuation site. We find two weapons in relatively quick succession here. The first one is the Deagle, which is just about as you'd expected. A fun weapon. Then we get the scoped revolver. This weapon is about as hilarious as it looks. It kinda serves the same purpose as the Deagle, but I don't mind the variety. And the scope also doesn't hurt. Troops arrive and, as expected, they aren't friendly. They are pretty much the same as the HECU, though in this mod they are private mercenaries. No, not those ones. Would have honestly been cooler. The assassins also got a bit of a rework visually. And speaking of assassins, we get a completely new enemy here. One that really impressed me. We have seen pretty much everything in Half-Life and mods for it. From the usual scientists and guard zombies to HECU zombies, HEV suit zombies, construction worker zombies. Though there's one I've never seen before. Assassin zombies. Oh well, in this case it's agent zombies. Zombies that walk around half-cloaked. A very fun concept. Especially due to the fact that they often get used in the dark canals of this chapter, for which we can use a suit function I've not yet talked about. Night vision. It's only slightly better than the night vision of, say, Counter-Strike, but it doesn't hurt to have. What we also get is a surprising twist of the robots turning evil. Who would have thought? I'm of course making a joke here. The robots actually brought some fresh wind to the enemy pool. The weather eventually changes to rain, including custom ground textures to show the rain impacts. This is some insane level of detail. Oh, have I mentioned yet? This mod was made by one person. XF Alien started making this mod in 2009
makes sense.
and only fully released on Steam in 2024. 15 years. This is the kind of dedication I love to see in mods. Here's another cool detail. We open the skate to which the body leaning on it falls over. Remember that there's no ragdoll physics in Gold Source. This is the small, technically unneeded stuff that makes the world come to life. Diana tells us about a plan to get to Sector F of the facility where an old teleporter is located. The idea being to rescue the researchers we sent there. This will be the main goal of this mod. But first we need to re-enable a distress call. She will head to the teleporter with a security guard while we do so. At this point the chapter starts to drag in my opinion. There are great environments, clever puzzles and some cool set pieces with some cool combat, but as mentioned, this chapter was the longest of the four and could easily be separated into two. Not that would change anything about the flow though. It didn't feel like we were progressing much. What's missing here is a sense of importance. We should have been given a more clear goal. Instead, it feels like we're wandering through random environments aimlessly. What I would suggest to fix this is to have the distress call we have to send be located at a large radio tower that we can see looming in the distance, similar to the Citadel in Half-Life 2. That way, you constantly know you are making progress as you get closer and closer. In this chapter, we receive 4 more weapons. The M16 we know and love as a separate weapon from the SMG, satchels that now look like C4, and an RPG. All of them are pretty much the same as the original, outside from the looks and sounds. You may have noticed that those were only 3 weapons, which is because I've saved the best for last, as we also received the best weapon of this mod here, the Barrett Sniper. It's mostly similar to the opposing Force Sniper, but I mean, look at it and listen to it.
That's some power behind it.
Satisfying. I want to use this opportunity to talk about this mod's music, which I believe is just a mix of public music made by random people. If that's the case, that's perfectly fine. The music fits well into the game overall. Anyways, this chapter finally comes to an end and we enter the penultimate chapter, Night Shift. The chapter pretty much starts off with us having to Rosenberg Diana from one place to another, to which we see this cool sequence in which she, seemingly, dies. Of course, this won't be the end of her. This was a clever solution to the problem of Diana. What I mean is that there is no good reason for her to remove herself from you at this point lore-wise. You both want to reach the teleporter in Sector F, so her getting trapped and almost killed by a Vortigaunt was a nice and clever way to solve this. Otherwise, the developer would have needed to include way more dialogue and gameplay mechanics for her, which frankly would just get tiring. I mean, we've all played Blue Shift, haven't we? We also get a new weapon relatively early. This one is some kind of alien laser weapon. It's somewhat similar to the Tau cannon, but it instead only fires a singular high-power shot, and ammo for it is super rare. The last weapon we find is Snugs. They're as useless as they always are. This chapter starts off with some more direct and bright sunlight, and it overall kinda shifts into a beige yellow tone at first. Wait, no!
Delta particles.
And eventually, as the title of the chapter leads you to believe, it turns nighttime. The combat here was the most unforgiving. If you just want to have a fun experience, I'd heavily recommend playing on easy. This chapter features some of the most unique environments yet, with hanging tramcars driving through cliffs followed by a Gonark boss fight, to windy thunderstorm nights fighting against Vortigauns and PMCs with snipers. This chapter ends as we reach Sector F and reunite with Diana, who now looks different due to losing her jacket, and even having a bandage on her arm. Not long after this do we see her slip into a protection suit, to which we start a teleporter and hop into the final and most impressive chapter of this mod, Miscalculation. As I speak about in every single video in which I mention Zen in Half-Life 1 sucks, and so does it in Blue Shift. And frankly, even Black Mesa, the Half-Life 1 remake, has quite a few problems in Zen if you ask me. Zen is hard to get right, especially in Gold Source. Though if there is a good example of Zen in their mod, it is this one. As we saw during teleportation, Diana got separated from us as we teleported, which is the miscalculation this chapter's title talks about, which was probably caused by the PMC shooting at the teleporter. The chapter starts off very promising with a beautiful skybox, including faraway Zen mountain ranges. It then gets not so promising, with us going through vents of some sorts, following simple Zen caves. This is very similar to Blue Shift Zen. Relatively quickly though does Zen become visually distinct from all other iterations of Zen. First off, it looks very detailed, which I attribute to it deciding to include large mountains below the player instead of just having it be a void. It really makes this Zen iteration stand out among others. Outside of this, there are a bunch of new fun things like new plants, like these ones with hanging vines of sorts and these beautiful little spores around it. There's also a somewhat new enemy introduced here that I think is very annoying. Hornet hives. These will launch hornets at you until you die, unless you break them. This room specifically features many of them. I thought they were fine, though their implementation was a bit lacking, as it's very hard to avoid taking damage here. There was also this interesting looking section featuring these large vine walls you navigate through. We eventually enter a teleporter that takes us to a new part of Zen. This one has a blue, almost purplish tone to it. It immediately starts off with a gargantua boss fight. It was pretty unique, as you had a tunnel system below the main arena, including a healing pod. That way you could whack-a-mole pop out of holes to shoot at it. After this fight, we get a glimpse of a set piece that blows every single set piece I've ever seen in a Half-Life 1 mod out of the park. A Zen tornado. Look at this! And if you want to know, yes, it works. If you jump into it, you will be spun around and killed. Hats off for creating this XF alien. This really had my jaw on the floor. This isn't everything though. After a bit of jumping around these beautiful purple environments, we teleport to the next area, where we get placed onto a rotating asteroid. This isn't just for show, it's actually placed into a puzzle element in which a galaxy that flies by radiates the player and also charges a battery. After the last teleport, we arrive at the final area of Zen. The galaxy is still shining above us, and in a Zen research station we find Diana, who we then Rosenberg out of here and defend while she charges up a teleporter. This was a unique section, but also very hard. And luckily for everyone touch-starved out there, as YouTube has shown me that will be about 99% of you, Diana jumps into the teleporter after you and hugs you in doing so, which is where you'd think the game ends. And it does. The credits roll here, but this isn't the end. After the credits, we're placed back in Sector F. It looks oddly abandoned, with odd growths all around. Moving even further, we open a door and see Zen. It seems his lab got transported into Zen somehow, which is where this mod ends fully. Oh, those scientists we wanted to rescue from Zen?
Sad.
Yeah, they're dead. Forgot to mention that. We achieved nothing. At least we got a hug though. Delta Particles is the most unique a mod gets while still fitting into the Half-Life universe. Creating an entirely new research facility with its own unique aesthetic, people and weapons is an insane undertaking for which 15 years is pretty fitting if you do it alone. That being said, it is perfectly executed here. Delta Base stays in your head as its own unique thing, and even if I may be able to find certain nitpicks here and there, it's an incredible experience overall, if not alone for the many unique weapons you get. Which is my next point. Delta Particles perfectly picks up on the weapon ratio that Half-Life 1 had. Half-Life 1 could have done with a weapon or two fewer, but it's good that it didn't. At the same time, Half-Life 2 didn't need a weapon or two more, but it's a shame it doesn't. Delta Particles has a few weapons you might just never use, but having that variety in your weaponry, a creative variety at that, simply enhances the fun of combat. And on top of that, the scarcity of ammo forces you to go through your whole arsenal pretty regularly, so it even encourages the usage of different weapons. I do wish there would have been at least one weapon with infinite ammo of sorts, similar to the Hive Hand, especially at the final sections where you have to defend Diana, as if you manage to run out of ammo you are pretty much fully stuck. Same goes for a few other sections. I enabled cheats a few times in order to progress. The interactions with Diana and other characters are pretty much flawless. Of course there is the problem of the strong accents, which will have you focusing more on trying to understand her than on what she's saying. The implemented subtitles are a good solution to this obviously, but I would still love to be able to understand what is being said, which is where my next point of critique happens, which is that there is basically no story. We have lots of story surrounding the Delta base itself, the PMC coming in and everything, but it's pretty much just an exact mirror of Half-Life 1's storyline, but this time we don't achieve anything in the end. Half-Life 1 ends with us killing the Nihilant and thus freeing the Vortigons, stopping the effects of the Resonance Cascade. The only resemblance of a story this mod has is the rescue of those researchers, who all just turn out to be dead, so we head back. The mod would have played out the same if we just took an exit door the first time we met Diana. A lacking story doesn't mean a mod is bad, but a good story will always lift up a mod. In this case, I fear it's a bit of a detriment. I loved learning about Delta Base and everything, but there was something missing. What if we instead brought the scientists back to Delta Base and then fought our way out of the facility? Perhaps there could have been a reason to go back to Zen as well before that happens, which could have still led to the twist ending. Just something that makes the story feel relevant. The only thing I love of the storytelling is how it started, with the entanglement of the Black Mesa research facility, and us actually standing there in the test chamber. All this being said, this mod is still an incredible experience, one that I recommend each one of you to try, which is super easy to do, thanks to this mod being on Steam. So yeah, thank you to XF Alien for making this mod. Consider subscribing and joining the Discord, and otherwise, thank you for watching.
I guess I can play it. Because Half-Life has like Steam support, I think. Nowadays. Anyways, that was interesting.